It's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of Spigs18 or Anthony. We have Alphadean or simply Dean. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch and subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a great help to our channels and our efforts, and we really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving us. And yeah, without further ado, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, you know, Al, as usual, it's going to be a cool, laid-back night. We're going to have a nice discussion here. But currently, we're seeing this massive influx of players, you know, from other systems. And yeah, D&D, specifically fantasy games. And these new players are looking to get their fantasy on, you know, in other systems. MCG produces a wide variety of products, and they have made quite a few books at this point. So at some points, it could be overwhelming to newcomers to try to figure out everything that they might need to run a fantasy game in Cypher System. So today, we're just going to go over what books are available, what you might need to get started, and give some suggestions. We do have videos previously that actually walk through each of these products, but we just want to kind of touch on it and, you know, kind of get people a feeling of what they can do with the fantasy in Cypher. Anthony.
What's up? What's up? Hey guys, welcome to the CU. Quick question. Chat is saying that we're either frozen or they can't see our faces, but it looks clear on my end. So
So yeah, like I would give the quick disclaimer, I guess, also verbally. I said it in chat. My internet is giving me very wonky readings. I'm the one hosting the stream. So if there's stuttering, any stops, whatever have you, just know that it's probably my fault. And again, the video is being recorded in its full extent and proper quality, so it will be on YouTube tomorrow. And yeah, sorry again about all the stuttering and quality issues. I will have a word with my ISP once we're done with this. But
also,
yeah,
too, I'm definitely clipping out the Al saying it is my fault. So we can save that for later. Anytime there's an issue, I can just, it is my fault. Just put it on, you know. Just keep on showing it over and over.
That's a good one.
But let's get back to fantasy and Cypher System. Al came up with this idea, but it was funny that Al came up with this idea because literally today I was telling someone on the server that I was on Reddit and I saw someone saying that Cypher wasn't capable of running fantasy. So I basically said, hold my beer. And I posted what you call it, keep on the borderlands on the server just to prove people wrong, because that is one of the, you know, it's furthest from the truth. I think not only does Cypher run fantasy, it runs it really well. It's just having a different mindset on one, how character progression works and how actually the flavoring of, you know, the fantasy genre works in the system. And we'll get into all that. But yeah, I had my hold my beer moment.
I had no idea, like, again, full transparency,
Yeah.
like, I came up with this idea completely, I had no idea that happened. It was completely independent to just, I guess, serendipity.
I posted keep on the borderlands today on the server.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
Great, you know. And you inspired me to get started. So like I said, I'm going to be running either Barrier Peaks, some Wild Space, or some Dark Sun. So it's going to happen. We show them Cypher can do anything you want it to do.
Gonza in chat said, where's the Reddit link? Just go on Reddit and put Cypher System Fantasy. There's like 80 links of people saying Cypher can't run fantasy. It's not just one. I don't know what, like, there's this is off topic, but that's what we do. We go off topic all the time, but there's a huge influx of people joining Cypher System or trying out Cypher System for the first time, which is phenomenal. But there's also this influx of people saying, hey, Cypher System can't do this, or Cypher System sucks. And that's coming 99% of the time. It's coming from people who've never played the system before, which is funny. And it's okay to have that opinion, right? But at least give the game a try once before you say it sucks.
What's funny is even what you're saying is crazy, because I just posted it up on our Cypher Unlimited on Facebook. One of the local game stores that I go to, guy was having an issue with DMs weren't showing up and people weren't able to play, and he asked me, if I could take over. And like I said, I think I just converted 4 to 6 people, whatever, because 2 people played the game, and then there's like others watching, and now everybody wants to be on the Cypher tip. So yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I personally think it's when you come from a like a codified mechanical system like Pathfinder 5e, any of the D20 systems, that the rules are, they up in your face, the most important thing. And then you move to any narrative system, the powers by the apocalypse, the fates, the Cypher systems. It takes a minute as a player and as a GM to change your mindset, like what Dean says.
Paradigm shift.
To go more on, to lean more heavy in the narrative than it is than you do on the mechanics. So when someone reads it for the first time, it like gives the impression, oh, like this isn't gonna work because there's not a rule for this, or what do you mean? It's rulings over rules. Like that's not gonna work until you actually get it on the table. And I think that not only applies to Cypher System, it applies to a ton of games. Apocalypse has the same issue as well.
It's funny. I think Cypher System, the difference with Cypher System and like say PBTA or Fate or any of those, it has just a little bit more mechanics and structure than they do. And I think people try to embrace their game as if it's still a D&D or a Pathfinder, and they miss all the nuances of the system and the flexibility of it. Because like I said, I made that same mistake when I first started. My first couple of games with Numenera were travesties. They were train wrecks.
I will say, and again, this is not shade to anybody, or hopefully not bragging too much. I think my transition into Cypher System was actually super duper smooth because of my mindset for a narrative storytelling and having Anthony as my GM for my first couple of Cypher System games. It really showed me the beauty of the system, and yeah, I think I transitioned pretty well from Pathfinder D&D into Cypher System, but that's an aside.
Also, not for nothing, Al, by the time we started gaming heavy, me and you, as with our home group, I was already running 5e of Pathfinder as a rules-light system to begin with. So I wasn't leaning heavily on the crunch in those crunchy heavy systems to begin with.
It definitely helped me.
So I think that helped helped a little bit as well. You know what I mean? I was already, into Fate. I was already into all those other games before I got into Cypher. So it was changing my mindset even when I was running Pathfinder.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's the thing. I think with us being as plain as long as we have, we were all trying to tell a story by then as opposed to worrying about rules. But, just learning Cypher, once you grok the system, you realize, oh my God, this is like everything I've been looking for.
Yeah.
So let's get into the topic because we went off topic.
Yeah, let's do it.
So all you first-time viewers, that's gonna happen a lot. So get used to it. I would apologize, but I would be apologizing a couple of times per video. So it's just what we do. It happens. But let's get into fantasy, guys. And like what Al said, with this influx of all these Cypher System getting all this attention. Monte Cook Games is getting all this attention because the world is burning on the other side of the continent. And with the whole OGL debacle, we're not really going to get into that. But now you get a whole new set of eyes looking at the Cypher System. And since fantasy is the genre that most gamers are comfortable with, I think most gamers going into Cypher are going to look at how does it handle fantasy. So the first book that we'll definitely jump right into is, because you can't play any of our other recommendations without at least understanding the Cypher System core rule book. So, let's talk about the Cypher System core rulebook. Al, you want to like do us a little breakdown?
Yeah, one second. I was pulling up the link for the store, so let me go up, open my notes. So yeah, so again, Cypher System rulebook, a given. It's the core book you'll need to learn the base of the game, the base rules for the system. And the Cypher System is a universal rule set, so there isn't a ton of fantasy specific material within the book. But there is some. There's a small section that touches on fantasy genre, and that chapter can be found. That can be found in chapter 13. It's pages 252 in the book or 254 in the PDF. And here you'll find. Oh, actually, let me open it up so you can see what it looks like. There we go. So here you'll find advice for creating a fantasy setting, some suggested foci from the book, optional rules for spell casting, a couple of fantasy species descriptors. You'll find dwarf, elf, half giant, and hellborn here, as well as some items and equipment. There's also 5 fantasy artifacts to be found here, which is pretty nice, considering it's just an add-on to this universal rulebook. Again, there isn't a ton of fantasy material within here, but it's a great starting point if this is the only book you can get. You can definitely, with just the Cypher core book, run fantasy. Period. You can do it.
And to be honest, we have been running fantasy before any of these other books that we're going to talk about later in the video came out with this core book alone.
Right, because and again, especially if you come from the days of home brewing, your own setting, it gives enough information to get the juices flowing. So,
Ken Hub was kind enough to mention the chat. Even if you can't afford the book, you could get the SRD for free, which has the majority of the core rules, if not all. So
90%.
Get the
technically, it's about 90% of the entire core book is in the SRD, and all the rules are there.
Awesome, by the way.
Yes.
So the first thing I'm gonna say when we sit here and start talking about the Cypher core book in regards to fantasy, right, is that one of the major hiccups that someone coming from D&D or Pathfinder immediately gets is, can I create my druid character? Can I create my cleric character? Can I create my barbarian character? Or any of the core types that you see in normal, D&D terms, right? And the answer is yes. But since character creation is extremely different, in Cypher System, you're basically building a sentence, and each part of adjective, noun, verbs, each part of the sentence adds on to abilities and skills that, once you have a complete sentence, builds out your character. You have to view it from the lens of flavoring, as opposed to this is what a cleric does, or this is what a druid does, right? So you pick and choose what abilities between your descriptor type and focus that fits closely to whatever concept you're going for. So they give you advice on how to do that. Like, and they have a druid. You pick the explorer type with a flavor in magic. So yeah, it's a little more work to get the codified D&D characters, but it's definitely doable.
And what I'm going to say about what you just said, Anthony, the biggest thing for people to try to wrap their brains around, or grok, as we like to say, or even that paradigm shift, is that unlike D&D or Pathfinder or games that have a little bit more crunch to them, this one is basically trying to give you the ability to flavor your character how you see it, and it allows that character to be organically built versus, I get 4 spells a day and I get this many, hit points per level, and I get this and I get all of that stuff becomes kind of organic, and you have a say in it. So just wanted to add that on.
Yeah, what else is the Cypher core book? It also gives you some tips and advice on how to run a game, right? But like with any generic system, right, you only have but so much pages to dedicate to each particular genre. And the Cypher System core rule book isn't any different. So they give you a general overview on what what type of fantasy is, you know, and there's another book we're going to talk about that goes more in depth in it, but it explains the difference between traditional fantasy and high fantasy, which are probably the two most common, right? It also gives you suggestions for which foci to pick for a fantasy game, and you find that that's the common theme in all the Cypher System books is, and I can't stress this enough, when you're running a specific genre, not only fantasy, this applies for any of the, narrow down the foci list to make the foci available to stuff that actually fits the genre. Like a perfect example is I'm running keep on the borderline conversion for Cypher System. If somebody wants to say I have builds robots, that's not really gonna make sense. Maybe we could rework it to make builds constructs or something like that.
It makes golems.
Exactly. Make golems. Yeah, exactly. That was my first thought.
Like that. But it's well in your prerogative to limit the foci that makes sense for the genre. That's the reason why the CSR gives you the suggested foci list.
If you look at the pages, you know, for the fantasy section, it literally, as it goes through, it literally tells you, it breaks it down. Running a fantasy game, suggested types for the fantasy game. Then it gives you suggested foci for your fantasy game, suggested creatures and NPCs. So it gives you a framework within the flexibility of the parameters of the system itself, which I think is like really brilliant. And it does make it easy once you have wrapped your brain around that characters are built from an archetype and then basically flavored by the players. You know, the player literally gets to design their dream character.
Yep. It also provides the GM with a couple of fantasy artifacts. It gives you a complete equipment guide, which is actually pretty good, you know, considering that it's, you know, it's just a basic equipment guide. It gives you a general understanding of, you know, how you should be viewing armor, how you should be viewing armor and stuff like that. I mean, armor, weapons, and stuff like that. I'm gonna touch on this again and might come up later. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but Cypher is very narrative based. So you could find any armor from the Dungeon Master's Guide, right? And easily convert it to Cypher System, because Cypher doesn't concentrate on the minutia of statistical value to each item, but it's more of a narrative. So it groups it into groups. So, you know, you may have, I have this cool ebony armor. Essentially, it's just a heavy armor, right? How you flavor it in the game is irrelevant unless you want to add an ability to it. And if that's the case, you just turn it into an artifact, attach the ability to it, give it a depletion roll, and that's it. You're good to go. Cypher is all about, it's all about enhancing on the fly. It's all about creating on the fly. So it kind of, you know, me personally, as somebody that likes to improv, it's my preferred way of doing things, you know. And I know it might not be for some people, but I prefer that design aesthetic myself.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying a mouthful, because I mean, it's just like the conversation that's going on. We started a conversation in the chat, and they're talking about the foci, and that's something you people should look at too. Is how foci are designed. Foci are not designed for them to be static either. You should really look at them and, you know, see what the aesthetic of it is, you know, and then you can reflavor it for it to look like what you're looking for as far as a character is concerned. And what I like about that is that your characters become extremely unique, you know, whereas when you look at 5e and you look at a wizard next to a warlock, next to a sorcerer, most of the stuff that they make a difference of is mechanical, but it is the flavor of the characters. Whereas with Cypher, you do it with your foci. You can take a foci, you can take, you know, let's see, a quick foci. Let me just look over here real quick. It was like we were just talking about, you know, builds robots. You know, we could do craft flesh golems. We could do, you know, creates magical constructs or whatever the case may be. All of those things, and you just tweak those things to make it fit the fantasy setting. Does it change anything mechanically? No, but it changes everything aesthetically, and it changes everything about the experience you get as a player.
Or even better, why don't you take one that's actually here on the suggested fantasy list to show how it would show. Like, let's say take something like Fights with Panache. That's
Okay.
something that your rogue character, your traditional rogue, that might be a foci that works with that. Or
I was actually thinking Bard.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Bard, yeah. And think about that. You made a great statement, Al, because it makes me go back to my Captain America thing, but you perfect. A bard is a speaker who fights with panache. You know? So, you know, that's awesome. So now you got this.
Me personally though, if I'm going bard, I prefer the what's the one with the instruments?
Oh, fights
Oh,
with
plays a deadly weapon.
Oh yeah,
Plays a deadly weapon.
Yeah,
Wields a deadly weapon or something like that.
It plays a deadly instrument, I believe.
Yeah.
There it is, yeah.
But like, say you want to do a what you call it? You want to do let's pick some. Bears a halo of fire. That's a sorcerer that concentrates on fire magic, right? There's a ton of them. You know, a ton of them that can easily be flavored into the master spells. Would be the obvious wizard.
But like you said, bears a halo of fire. Or if you wanted to be, again, flavor, just say bears an elemental halo. And this means the person, you know, does ice, fire,
Yep.
water, you know. You could have, you can do, and it doesn't break the game.
Works miracles is your what you call it, cleric
Or paladin.
or paladin, your priest. You know what I like for paladin? Defends the weak.
That's a good one too.
Yeah.
I just like healing magic too much. I know you can get it from other things, but it's really good from Works Miracles.
And you know, you're talking
what we're trying to make is that you can build every one of the core D&D characters with multiple foci capable of doing it. So you actually have more options. You know, I think the argument is, oh, you don't have enough options. No, it's actually the opposite. You have more options because you have different avenues in which to build your character that you wouldn't traditionally have in D&D or Pathfinder.
And another thing is, let's talk about something else we didn't touch on. Well, what if you want to build that multi-class character? Everybody, you know, in D&D, you had to be a fighter magic user. You had to give up levels of your fighter to do your magic and so on and so forth. What's cool about Cypher System, they have that built in with flavors. So you could literally play a warrior who masters weapons, but give him a magic flavor. So now he's got a couple of magical abilities right there in his character, but he's still Billy Badass with his sword. You know, and this is what I love about Cypher System. It does not bog you down in the minutia. You're not bogged down in systemology, as I like to call it, you know.
It's literally a plug and play device. You see, like, again, we're trying to tweak our characters to fit a certain archetype within Cypher System rule set, and this is baked into Raw. As you're picking your abilities, as you're making your character tiering up, it tells you, hey, you can choose from the flavors. You can choose from an ability list. Like, again, some of that stuff might be up to the GM, but the rules do guide and say, hey, if this setup isn't working for your character idea, throw in a flavor ability in place of something else.
And before we actually move on, I think the Cypher System core rulebook is more than capable of running fantasy with just this book. It's more than capable. But there's going to be two other books that we're going to mention that I personally think is essential to give you the full fantasy experience in Cypher. But before we do that, I think it's important that we touch on two topics. One, that we're going to touch on what the namesake of the system is, right? Ciphers is what makes fantasy work.
Makes it
not only traditional fantasy, but it allows you to expand it to every genre of fantasy. I'm talking about sci-fi fantasy. I'm talking about, you know, super high fantasy, modern fantasy, because ciphers will be it's the one-time use object that you get, and you could do these fantastical things once, right? And then you get more ciphers, and the process repeats. Unlike D&D, you have the magic eraser for your game. You could give your players anything that's in the D&D DM's guide as a cipher, and they only get to use it once. So if it's broken, big whoop. They used it once. Okay, that was broken. Never again.
I made a mistake.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the thing about that is that's what Cypher does. Cypher allows you to learn from your mistakes, and your mistakes are not necessary. They don't break anything, because now like Anthony said, they got to use it once. They got out of that situation. Okay, that thing is gone. They're never going to get another one of those.
Also,
no, I was just gonna say now that we're touching on it, I never really thought about the application, or how great it is with how ciphers are structured, that you literally can almost take a spell from D&D or any game almost verbatim and call it a cipher. And that's it. Like, that's amazing. Like, for anyone trying to go from one system to Cypher System, that is a super easy way for you to inject that system into your system, or into Cypher System.
Yes, perfect point, Al. So just to break it down in D&D terms, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just talk about like running traditional fantasy games from other systems to Cypher System, right? Things like healing potions or giant strength. Those traditional potion one-time use items you get in D&D, those are all ciphers, right? But all the abilities that you would normally see in a spell could be ciphers, right? All the magic items that you see in D&D, those are artifacts, right? And I think that's where the confusion lies a little. An artifact in Cypher System is something that has an ability, but the difference is it has a depletion roll. So you could give somebody like a ring of dragonflight, right? But if they roll a 1 on a D10, that ring is no longer valid. It goes, it's gone, kaput, goes forever. So even the artifacts have that, like magic eraser switch on them, that if it's too OP, eventually they're gonna hit that depletion roll. You don't have to worry about it again. So you don't have to do a big GM move. Oh, someone stole your ring of flight.
And that's again an awesome point. You can also set your depletion rolls if you're worried about something being too strong, for it to happen a little more often. Like, what is it? 1 to 3 on a D6.
It can be a 1 in 10, or it can be a 1 on a D6. So the opportunity, and you don't always have to have. And you can also do that too if you just want to inject another level of, crazy with it. For example, if they do hit a depletion roll and you don't want them necessarily to have to lose their item, you can just say that, now the item is inert for X amount of time. It has to go through a reset, or you could even make it even better, turn it into a quest. You got to take your sword of Dragonfire back to the ancient volcano of dragons and dip the blade back into there. And now, so you got a whole side quest going on, but it's a way for them to get the power back in their blade. So this is all kind of stuff that Cypher allows you to do. It allows you to flex your creative juices and your creative muscles as a GM, and not necessarily shit on the players either. So I think it's great.
Real quick, 2 things. Well, one, KenHub gave amazing advice for the artifact depletion roll thing. I'm just going to read it verbatim. And if an artifact is really messing you up as a GM, hey, GM intrusion, bad guy damages your artifact. The depletion roll now becomes smaller. Like, that's an amazing way to deal with it. Yep. And the second thing was, and since we're talking about Cypher System and people who are coming into the system, someone in the chat, newcomer CB Nation 94, asked, how do spells work? So within Cypher System, if we're talking just raw, not because there are some optional rules for spell casting and whatnot, we'll let you read those in depth on your own. But as far as the raw goes, abilities are your spells, and abilities get casted or cast through your stat points. So all your stat points become your resources to cast your abilities or your spells, if you would prefer that word. But in Cypher System, they're more called abilities than spells. They're essentially the same thing.
So
Yeah,
to break that down real quick, what you say that?
I was gonna say it's funny that Ken Hub said that because in my Tolis game, I know Mike's in there, but I designed a lich that because in my Tolis game the guys had some high end artifacts. So in my Tolis game, I designed a lich that the depletion rolls on all their artifacts go up by 4 anytime they're within the radius of the lich. So if they want to attack them with their artifacts, it's actually, they have like a 50-50 chance that they're going to lose their artifact.
And exactly, which is awesome. So, CB Nation, the newcomer, what you were saying, to give you an example, adepts are your typical spellcasters. They have a series of abilities. They have an ability called Onslaught. Onslaught can be flavored. We did it in a D&D game we ran one time when Anthony ran Keep on the Borderlands before. I turned Onslaught into my magic missile spell. It was also Burning Hands because I used it like that, but it was the same spell because mechanically it works the same. It's just the flavor of it. Ward spell was mage armor. I used what was it? Distortion. It was like a blur spell. So all of those things are right there for you but you just have to look at it through that lens. You don't have to, worry about it. And that's the other thing, they give you direction in how to view the abilities and what they are.
Yeah, like everybody in chat is saying that what you call it, GM intrusions are a godsend to correct mistakes. Cypher inherently has all these these narrative mechanics that helps a GM, level the playing field or make it fix up all the errors they may make during scenes. And you guys know I always like to say GM intrusion is the whiteout of gaming for Cypher System. Is your best friend. So I think we covered the basics of how Cypher System, the core rulebook, touches fantasy. Unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about. Oh no, I'm sorry. It introduces species as a descriptor as well. We didn't touch on that. But it doesn't give you many, guys. It gives you elf, dwarf,
half giant, hellborn,
and hellborn.
Which is basically
the optional spellcasting rules. We didn't talk about that either.
And but when you look at that, what you're saying about the species, what it does is it gives you those baseline species. Hellborn is nothing but a tiefling, half giant, Goliath, whatever, names that they couldn't use, but they use those as generic. But the way they do them, they actually show you as well how to build a species into the game for your players. It's not hard. It doesn't take long. And it's just basically looking at it through the lens of what kind of benefit are they getting, and then what kind of inabilities you want to lay on them, because, everything that's part of the sentence adds to your character in some form or fashion.
This is in the other book, but I'm going to say this now. You guys know, if you want traditional fantasy, right, I highly suggest you use the optional rule of species on top of your setting.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of that. And what I mean by that, instead of your instead of your half giant adept who what you call it bears a halo of fire, you're a half giant inquisitive adept who bears a halo of fire. It doesn't break anything to just add the species on top of the sentence. One, because it actually gives you more of that fully fleshed out. Cypher System was based on Numenera, which the majority of the setting is humans. So it doesn't really concentrate so much on species. But when you deal with fantasy is all about the different races. It's all about the differences between species and humans and elves and dwarves and half-orcs. And, it's all about the differences is what makes fantasy unique, what makes fantasy enjoyable. You know, it's what makes the party dynamic work, right? So in order to capture that feeling in Cypher System, I highly recommend that you do it that way. And
So
the variant human, since the human doesn't have the abilities from a species, I just let the humans pick two descriptors.
And here's another thing, because actually League of Extra asks, how do I build a variant human in Cypher? Well, like Anthony said, you can take an additional, you can literally say, okay, humans from this part of the world have this baseline descriptor. And then you choose your other one, the one that makes you unique. But everybody from this portion of the world, you know, like say you were making, I don't know, you know, quote unquote, the Vulcans of humanity in your fantasy world. Well, everybody there might have, you know, they're intelligent or learned, you know, as a baseline descriptor. And then you pick another one to flesh out your personality. You know, little things like that. I mean, it's really not hard to manipulate the system because it is modular. It's plug and play. What works, works.
Exactly. And that's an excellent way to do it. I never thought about that, where you just designate a descriptor to a region of humans. That's an awesome way to do it.
Yeah, I've done it a few times. So, you know what I mean? And when it,
okay,
I was just going to move on to the variant spell casting real quick, and then we would move to the next book. But did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say it works, man. the human two descriptors, it work. I'm gonna preach that to the end. I've never been a fan of species as a descriptor. I think it takes away from your character, honestly. And I think I don't think it's fair that it typecasts every species except for human as one particular way. You know, like if it takes away the uniqueness of being an elf. It takes away the uniqueness of, you know, of being Hellborn. Like, just because you're a Hellborn, this is every Hellborn.
That's all you get. Yeah. There shouldn't be that. So let's jump into the optional spell casting rules, which I think are pretty brilliant too. You know, because all Cypher says is, as a PC, you can spend XP to pick up other abilities, and those abilities will be your spells. They're going to be powered the same way. They're going to cost the same thing, but you're just spending XP every level to, you know, or every tier or whenever. You can learn spells in between. And as a GM, you can always say that learning new spells does not count towards your four portions to level up. But that's how you're building your spell book.
Yep. I also will say you're not going to get the Vancian magic that you normally see in, say, something like D&D from the start. It's like what Dean was saying earlier. It takes a little. It's more sorcerer than wizard in the core Cypher System book. God's Forsaken does some. You know, it changes some stuff to give you more of that wizard feel. But in the Cypher core book, it's more sorcerer than wizard. So you don't have that difference between the wizard and the sorcerer that you do in D&D.
And like I said, I've never liked how D&D handled the Vancian spell system anyway. So this was a breath of fresh air, you know, so, but if that's the feel you're looking for, you know, there are some options out there for that as well.
Yeah. And I will say this as well, which I think a lot of people, one of the reasons why you get the complaint that they don't think Cypher does fantasy well is because I think you get less spell selection. If we, being 100% honest, you get less spell selection in a Cypher with a Cypher character at tier 1 and 2. I think it improves as it goes up, but there are a lot of little tips and tricks you could do that could actually change that fact. But if you're just going by like core rules and just picking, you have to take add up, you have to take you're gonna have to like lose a little bit on the extra skills and stuff just to build up your spells if you want to be that hardcore caster.
Right. But again, like I said, though, the other thing, the thing that I like most about it is that because of the way Cypher is structured, no two spellcasters have to be the same. No two spellcasters are going to be alike. You can even have two spellcasters. You know, you could even you can look at the speaker and the adept, and both of those could be looked at as spellcasters. Their abilities, the way their abilities work, you know, because like I said, you can build a bard with the speaker. You can build your wizard or your sorcerer or your cleric, or you can even use a cleric. You can build a cleric with a speaker. It's just dependent on how you want it to unfold and how you're envisioning it. I think the thing with Cypher, what it does is it opens up the doorway for you to be a lot more creative, and you're not stuck in the ideology of class versus archetype, you know.
Well, I view Cypher more instead of the lens of it's a class. I view Cypher more as I'm a person that has this profession.
Exactly. It's an archetype. Like I said, classes frustrated me for the longest after, you know, playing for so long, because you would start looking at things and I was like, man, I want to build a character like I want to build Robin Hood. You know, Robin Hood's not a real range, not typically, you know, you build him as a ranger in most cases, but when you think about it, Robin Hood wasn't even a little bit rangerish, but he was more roguish, but he also was a hell of a fighter. He was a swordsman, you know, and it was hard to do that in, you know, typical D&D terms, because you had to pick what version of Robin Hood or what aspect of Robin Hood you wanted to create, versus with Cypher, hey, I'm making an explorer. I'm going to say he meets out justice. I'm going to give him a, you know, some combat flavors, da-da-da-da-da. And there you go. Now you got your character you want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, I think that's where Cypher System excels, is creating where I think the D20 games lack, to be honest, is you always see like these videos, not to bash, like all these D&D content creators that are doing videos on how to make the Hulk in D&D. And I look at those videos and I just laugh, because they go, you know, they jump into hoops and doing all this abstract, you know, views of the rules in order to get the Hulk. And, you know, with Cypher System, I can just pick up my book and just make it. You know what I mean? Right. I don't have to bend the rules. The rules are already warped for me to create any kind of narrative character I like. So where D&D falls short on that, Cypher excels.
Exactly.
But we kind of beat this one to a drum. Let's head on to the two books that we really need to.
So let's dive into the next one. Want me to dive in? I'll dive in. Yeah. So next on the list we got, which is an awesome book, God Forsaken. It is a fantasy toolkit book. Oh, once I pull my notes. But yeah, so this is a must-have if you're trying to run a fantasy and Cypher System. This is a huge toolkit book full of fantasy goodies. It has pretty much everything you need for running a fantasy game, except it's not a standalone book. Of course, you need the Cypher core book to play it because it doesn't have any of the actual system rules in it. But what you do get in Godforsaken is everything else you need to fully flesh out a fantasy game. You got character options. There's 4 new foci. There's takes animal shape, uses wild magic, walks the wild woods, and wields an enchanted weapon. Along with that, there's 25 brand new abilities, all in the fantasy vein. There's more fantasy species here. We got catfolk, dragonfolk, gnome, halfling, and lizard folk. We got we have 20 ciphers, over 50 artifacts, some equipment, optional rule modules, and advice for running, for running magic and the fantasy genre as a whole. Over 30 creatures and NPCs, 3 cipher shorts to get you started. They're called Tavern Brawl, The Thing on the Precipice, and Lost in the Dungeon. And the only thing this book really lacks is a fully fleshed out fantasy setting. There is a mini setting in it. It's about 48 pages, and there's 2 adventures set in that setting. But yeah, this is more of a
setting, by the way.
Yeah, All right, I'll let you talk about that in a second. But this book is more of a toolkit book than anything. But yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about the setting we find within Godforsaken?
Before we even get to the setting, I just want to say, Jason, thank you for the for 28
Subscription.
months. That is freaking awesome. We love you, Jason. 28 months is freaking amazing. I can't believe you could stick with us for 28 months. My wife can't stick with me for 28 months.
So, yeah, thanks, Jason. Awesome. You know,
So I was gonna say, Godforsaken is this is the book you need to run traditional fantasy. The Cypher System core book gets you started, but this finishes the race. Because this is the book that actually completes your whole fantasy. Because not only does it break down every genre of fantasy for you in layman's terms, so you could actually say, okay, I want to run modern fantasy tonight. I want to run, was it Sandals and Swords? I always get that wrong. Is that right? Or
Sandals and Swords, Swords and Sorcery, same thing.
Yeah. If you any of the genres you want to run, it's going to explain and break it down to you. But more importantly, they give you a ton of new spells, a ton of ciphers, a ton of artifacts, so you don't have to make everything up yourself. What the Cypher System core rulebook lacked and all the extra stuff, Godforsaken picks up. Okay, dude.
I was just gonna say the thing with Godforsaken just takes the core rulebook's idea of modularity to the next level. It gives you, like we said, when Al named all of that stuff, I mean, 20 ciphers, 50 artifacts, equipment, 25 new abilities. All of these things do nothing but put you and prepare you to be able to build on your own. And more so than just building on your own, the other thing Anthony said was how it talks about what type of fantasy game you want to run. Do you want your game to be a little bit more hardcore, low magic, more hard edge? Do you want a high fantasy game? Do you want to run, wuxia adventures, where martial artists and stuff like that? Do you want to run space age fan? Everything is right there for you to have at your fingertips. I think it's like pretty awesome. And then Al was saying that the book lacks a fully fleshed out fantasy setting. I think all the toolkit books have a great fantasy setting, but it's just the outward structure. It's the outline. So it's the idea is there, but you get to add to it. You get to make it your own. And that's something that I think Cypher does, hands down better than any system I've ever encountered, because I like to create. And I know a lot of people do. And I think it encourages it.
Yeah,
I think it's more the old school style of game design.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more Gygax. It gives you like a nice shell of a setting, and then you fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing when you look at it, that you have all of this stuff, and everybody knows the principles of the world, but again, it gets to be a unique world, because no different than in the real world. If I go to New York and spend time with Anthony versus going to spend time with my brother Shane, I'm going to have an entirely different experience. I get to see it because I'm seeing New York City through the lens of Anthony versus through the lens of this person. But it's still New York. I still know the place. So that's what excites me about Cypher System, and that's what excites me about Godforsaken and all the stuff that's in this book.
Dean, can we talk about foci now? Because I really want to talk about foci.
Let's do it. Let's get in it. Let's hit it. Let's hit it.
Because I think this is when everything we talked about in everything that we talked about in the Cypher core about how do you have to reflavor foci, this book does it for you. Right? It takes the existing foci, before I even get to the new foci, because that's ridiculous. But let's just talk about the section. It takes all the existing foci that were in the Cypher core book, and it shows you how to make it into a how to turn it into a fantasy foci, right? And that's what we spoke about earlier about having to, use your imagination to turn a non-traditional fantasy foci into a fantasy foci. Well, Sean does the work for you. So it builds robots like we talk about. And it says you can create goblins or other or animate things out of inanimate materials. And it explains how to do that and how that foci could become, a necromancer. It takes stuff like fuses mind with machine and explains how to make it a foci for fantasy. Grows to towering heights. It takes all the foci that the Cypher core book recommended you don't use, and it says, nah, you can use this. This is how you do it in a fantasy setting. This is how you explain it. And I think that's freaking awesome. I think when someone reads this, it helps them see, okay, this is how Cypher System really works. It's how far your imagination could take something.
I mean, like I said, you're talking about that. Think about this one. You have the Inquisitor. So you wanted to play an Inquisitor, meets out justice or operates undercover, which is so cool because you would never think about operates undercover through the lens of a fantasy game in the sense of, because that's just not that's not the terminology that we use. You're thinking about infiltrates or operating undercover. You're thinking about spies but there were spies back then. There were spies in medieval times. But this literally shows you, like Anthony said, and gives you the advice to move your into those realms in order to make exactly what you're looking for. Customization. Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say my favorite one to bring up is Al's favorite foci of all time, Drives Like a Maniac. It took the Drives Like a Maniac focus from the original CSR, and it made it even cooler because it gives you a semi-intelligent mount or even a flying carpet if the GM chooses, right? And it gives you all the abilities that you get from Drives Like a Maniac from the CSR, but now gives you an intelligent mount on top of that, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah. And
I saw that one on the fan in Godforsaken because I know that's one of Al's all-time favorite focus.
It's so fun.
Yeah, I know. Mister, I'm gonna drop the car on the dreadnought.
Hey, you were the one who gave me the ability to summon a ghost car at will. So
but again, Cypher allowed us to do that. You could summon your ghost car, and we fixed it. GM Intrusion fixed all of that, right?
Okay, dude, I'm sorry.
No, I was just laughing about it. Go ahead.
So it basically breaks down all the focus that you wouldn't normally think work in fantasy, and it gives you an explanation. And I just love this section. I think Sean did an awesome job in this section because to me, it covers two bases. It gives you all this extra material, right, that you normally wouldn't have thought about. But like I said earlier, if someone that's not used to the Cypher's, reflavoring or narrative style, this basically shows you this is the blueprint of how to do it, guys. And you can use this section to apply to every other part of Cypher System design philosophy, is reflavoring and restructuring the way an ability, a focus, a descriptor works to fit your game is essential to not only great GMing in Cypher System, it's essential into just playing Cypher System, period.
Oh, CB Nation 94 has a great question. They say, so I have a question. Say you want to run a 5e game like the Curse of Strahd with a prominent NPC follower who gets in and out of trouble with the party. How should said NPC work in combat?
So
Cypher I was just saying, Cypher gives you multiple options for using an NPC companion in combat. First of all, NPCs are going to be set. They're going to be set a level. So you can always say that character's level versus the level of the situation that they're in. If they're above it, then they can take out a bad guy here or there. or you can use the NPCs as an asset. So they always add an asset to one particular person, depending on the type of NPC they are. You can, I mean, it's just really.
I don't. I would use either one of those methods. I would use the NPC as a what you call an actual character, and the players just control the NPC and roll for the NPC.
But again, and you can do that too. I mean, but again, I didn't say you had to use my options. I said you have multiple options to go for it. So that's just another option.
Multiple options. I think the most common one for NPCs that are important to the party is to have the players use the companion rules for predation and have the players control the NPC, and they would apply effort as assets as the player instead of the NPC giving you assets as you give the NPC assets and you designate someone to roll for the player.
Yeah, but again,
roll for the NPC.
Again, multiple ways to handle it, and it really depends on what fits your table the best.
I'm just busting these chops.
He always does. I ain't worried about him.
He's like, multiple ways, except for the right way.
But again, what you just said isn't the right way. I mean, predation, they don't even talk about companions.
We're getting sidetracked again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Not the right way, the fun way. I hate the, what you call it, the...
wrong?
Yeah, what do you call it? It automatically happens rules with any of the things.
Yeah. Comparing the levels,
on the character level, that's not
good.
Good.
That could be a little boring, but it's also I can see the intent to streamline things with it. But again, it is more fun to roll the click clacks.
Yeah, and his particular question, he was like, it's a reoccurring NPC.
Yeah, it'll be basically another character for the players to decide what she does or they do. Yeah, definitely.
But Cypher could definitely do it. Dean just gave you two different. We basically gave you three different ways of doing it.
But yeah, back to Godforsaken.
Real quick before we move on. Dynamic Deviant said that just sparked a thought. What can't Cypher do? And now I have a list of settings I want to attempt. 'Tis a long list. Just so you know, between the three of us, we haven't found anything Cypher doesn't do. We've run from Scooby-Doo, Power Rangers. We've adapted movies, The Thing. Anthony's done multiple zombie settings. You name it, we've done it with the Cypher system. So it's just literally shifting your paradigm and embracing the modularity of the system and the flexibility of it, and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to not handle something in Cypher System, if that makes sense. So many things, basically everything we've tried so far fits. It just fits.
Everything you mentioned, Deviant, could easily be done. Halo, Gundam, Battletech, Space Combat, those are just, we could do those in our sleep.
Yeah, Jason did Clue. Like, come on. Like,
yeah, Jason did Clue. I adapted Stephen King's The Mist. I did Thundercats. I did Silverhawks.
No, I think you did Zootopia mixed with The Godfather.
You did Zootopia mixed with The Godfather, exactly. I mean,
and I've done Darkest Dungeon and what is it, Dead Space. Like you can do so much stuff with the system.
Well, I mean, we literally played basically Treasure Planet. We played Cyberpunk Pirates. It was freaking awesome.
But yeah, we are getting hella sidetracked.
No, we're gonna start answering questions after this. Dean keeps on jumping in with questions for the audience.
But yeah, so Godforsaken, an amazing toolkit for Cypher System.
Go over the focus that come with it.
Yeah, well, let me get to the foci section.
Yeah, because these are
the new foci. So yeah, the new foci that are present in the book takes animal shape. That was a big complaint that we heard a ton with the base Cypher System rulebook, was that there wasn't really a way to make a character like a druid who wild shapes or whatever have you. Boom, now you got it, easy peasy. This is basically that, the wild shape druid. It's very cool. We also got uses wild. What were you gonna say something, Dean? Sorry.
I was about to go just say uses wild magic, which is another godsend because if you want to think of the concept of chaos magic or, magic streams in your game or something like that, this is another great foci.
And yeah, next one's Walks the Wild Woods. That one's another druidy one.
Druid or ranger.
Or ranger, yes. More about living in
Or barbarian.
Whatever. Yeah, so many ways to flavor these things. And then the last one, new foci here, is wields an enchanted weapon, which is really cool.
Yeah. I like wields an enchanted weapon a lot. That's a great focus.
I actually used that in our Path of the Planebreaker game that Bruce wrote for us. Yeah. And it was really cool.
That's right. That was your focus in that game.
Yep, that was my focus. He had a flail fist. He had his left hand was missing, and he had a magical chain flail. It was like 6 feet long, and he smacked people, could shoot it out, and it came back. It was awesome. Just stuff that you don't get to do in normal D&D.
It also gives you a ton of new abilities, or not a ton, but it gives you maybe a 10 or so new abilities. And guys, don't forget, this is
25.
where
25 new abilities.
Or 25 new abilities. This is where I think people forget why Cypher could make kick-ass magic uses. I got a little secret for you. Every ability in any MCG book could be a magic spell.
Yes.
You already got the cost. You already got what it does. Right? Take it as a spell. If it matches the tier of when you pick it, guess what? That's your magic spell. And I'm also going to say this. When you're tiering up your character, you're picking 4 XP and you're playing a wizard, okay, maybe not take the extra recovery roll. Start doubling up on those additional abilities, because that's how you build your spell book. So if I'm tiering up, I might take 3 abilities out of my 4 advancements to build my spell book early, and I'll make up the extra effort and edge that I would normally get from tiering up later on as my character starts building.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. If you might tier up a little bit slower than everybody else, but just say you relegate at each tier, you relegate 6 points to new abilities, to new spell-like ability. Okay, so that means you're going to be slightly behind everybody else. When they hit tier 2, you'll be halfway to tier.
No, yeah,
tier
I'm talking about you get the 4 XP allows you to pick an additional ability.
No, I know that, but I'm saying with the optional spell casting rules.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah.
So I'm saying in that respect, you think about it. You're picking up 2 spells, and then of course with the tier up ability, picking an additional. That's 3.
Dean, can you explain what the optional spell casting rules are for someone that doesn't know?
Well, I thought I explained it I explained it 20 minutes ago when we were talking about it in the other book. It basically works like this: you spend 3 XP. And you pick up an ability during game, and that ability.
That's what I was looking for.
I had said that before, but okay. At any rate, you spend 3 XP. So if you give up, like I said, you set aside 6 XP that you know you're going to spend during tier 1 to pick up 2 extra spells, and then like Anthony said, when it's time to tier up, you take, okay, I'm gonna take an extra ability. Now that's 3 spells that you didn't just put in your repertoire, put you maybe a quarter away, halfway behind everybody else, but it doesn't break anything, and you're still a badass, and you're still very much viable within the game.
Yeah, it's very capable of doing it, just takes a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
So-
yeah, there's oh, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, with that being said, it also gives you like 30 more creatures that it just expands your monster list.
That's not the next chapter though. Let's go by the chapters, D.
I'm just looking at the notes.
Either
go ahead.
way, there is a list of equipment, fantasy equipment. You know,
Which is expensive.
Yeah, I'm gonna scroll through here. You can see there's quite a few things on the list here. There's descriptions for them. There's an item list, or excuse me, a random table list. There's armors, all the stuff you would expect to see.
It changes the starting equipment for warrior, adept, explorer to fit more in line with a fantasy setting, including it automatically gives you a weapon of your choice and it gives you a gold piece count.
Right. And it also, you know, we were just talking about foci. Just have to jump back to that. It also has part of that section, it talks about building your own foci as well and how to manipulate existing foci, like Anthony was saying earlier, you know, which is, again, brilliantly done.
All right, and this also gives you, Godforsaken gives you something that wasn't in the CSR. It actually breaks down the description of each fantasy weapon. So now you know what's the difference between a maul and a mace for someone that doesn't know. What's the difference between a polearm and a quarterstaff for someone that doesn't know. It gives you the difference between a crossbow and a crank crossbow. You know, it gives you the terminology and a heavy crossbow that, or a light crossbow that wasn't in the core fantasy, you know, the core Cypher System book. It gives you way more armor. It gives you a full description of all the armors. And here's another important thing. It gives you all the tools that you would normally get in a fantasy game. And I know this is all second half to people that play D&D, but someone that doesn't traditionally play a D&D game wouldn't understand what a flask of acid does. Wouldn't understand what a grappling hook does, or caltrops do. So, it explains all that stuff for you, and it gives you the gold cost, of course, if you was spending your money to buy this equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, they very much made this book with again, D&D in mind. You hate to say it, but there's gold costs. The items are very well described. You can see how much, how many different weapon types and whatnot there are. This is definitely something that if you're coming from D&D or another fantasy heavy setting or game, this should kind of click for you.
Yeah. It has animals, if you want to get a draft horse, you want a riding horse, how much they cost, how would they affect your character. It also breaks it down into food and lodging, what a common meal costs a day in a fantasy setting. The stuff that you get in most traditional fantasy books, but the Cypher System core book didn't have any of this. So it's really important that they put it in Godforsaken.
Yes. Then the book goes on to fantasy gaming inspiration for each of the types of fantasy. So if you want to run high fantasy, they have some inspiration for you to look at. Low fantasy, dark fantasy, dying earth, fairy tale. Wow, there's a lot more niches in here than I realized. Historical fantasy, contemporary fantasy, paranormal romance, whimsical fantasy, and again, it gives you inspirations of stuff to look at or read if you want to run games in those veins, which again, it's awesome for people who are, don't really know where they want to start.
Yeah, remember we were talking earlier about doing Dark Sun? That stuff is right there, Dying Earth. It's
that's essentially Dark Sun.
That's Dark Sun. That's what I'm saying. You want to do Dark Sun, they give you, the idea. You want to do historical fantasy, you want to take, the ideas of Hercules or something like that, or you want to create your own type of Xena, the warrior princess style game that deals with the Roman Empire, whatever. Everything is there. I mean, everything you could possibly want to play in is there. And then it even gives you a list of fantasy art inspirations and books and television shows and so on and so forth in order to, continue to inspire yourself.
Right, and then it breaks it down into the magic section, and this is actually a really cool section. You know, it talks about anti-magic, it talks about crafting magic items and how to do that as a player, how long it takes, how to craft ciphers, right? You know, how to build a cipher. It's really cool. And it has multiple ways of doing it, how to assign a difficulty. I've actually used crafting ciphers in a game yet. I want to do that. Have you?
I haven't used it in a game as a player doing it, but I have crafted it, used these rules to craft ciphers, you know, unique ciphers for the game, you know, and artifacts. You know, and you know, it even gives advice on whether you want your players to craft ciphers or have them find them, you know, throughout the game. You know, which again, you know, if you decided you wanted to be an artificer, you could literally have a person in game that made ciphers for the group, you know, and they would have to get resources and so on and so forth. You know, it moves forward, talks about cursed items,
Yeah,
you
which is
know,
so cool.
you know, death and resurrection, you know, every trope that you could possibly think of. I mean, ritual magic as a alternative to how magic works. If you want to have your game a little more gritty, like we're talking about the sword and sorcery, sword and sandals, because you know that magic isn't as dynamic in those games. It's long term and it's basically magic at a cost. You
And
know?
it has several examples of ritual magic. Once again, you could just pull these straight as a spell if you wanted to. You didn't want to use the ritual magic. Or if you want to use the ritual magic, it gives you some really cool ones here.
Yep. And it gives you
Really
it even gives you examples of rituals, which is nice, you know, things that can do different things. And these things could be like the basis of an adventure or a campaign. You know, if you were to say, you know, like for example, they have a conjure undead ritual. So you could say you got some crazy necromancer and he's got this plan to raise all the dead, you know, in the land, you know, and then you can have a, you know, undead apocalypse or something like that. You know, these are really cool optional ways of making your game your game.
And then, like I thought with the foci section, this is another reason why you need a God Forsaken is the Cypher section. Because the Cypher section is mad, you know, it's mad intensive on all the stuff that you wouldn't have gotten in the Cypher core book. These are ciphers specifically designed for fantasy. So he hits all the D&D tropes that you would normally get in magic items. He makes them into ciphers for you.
Yeah. You know, and then the next session, you know, when they talk about if you want to do a mystical martial arts idea, you know, just one quick trope, you know, running, climbing, and jumping speeds are all double, you know, because, you know, they do that in the Kung Fu movies, you know, people, you know, look at Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. They were literally floating across, you know, the tops of treetops and whatnot. All of those aspects, I love the fact that this book, you know, brings that into play. It brings into play classic fantasy tropes like possession, the secret and true names of characters, you know, so anything that you really want to bring to your table is in this book. Like
Amen
we were
to that,
saying.
brother.
Huh?
I said amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
And on top of the ciphers, there's a huge list of artifacts. Gigantic list. Let's just look at this list here. Like, this is a list of every artifact. Well, excuse me, some of them have asterisks. Those asterisks are in the Cypher core book. But I would say probably 4 or 5 of these have asterisks. Every single other one is a new artifact to this book. Like, I can just scroll through it here. You can see, like, there's so much.
Before we move on to our next book, because this is essentially the DM's guide and the player's. I mean, since the player's handbook is in the CSR, we were talking a D&D turn. This is the DM's guide and the monster manual fused into one book for you.
Yes, absolutely. Because it not only, I'm just saying, not only does it give you all the stuff we're talking about, but it also advises you on how to hand out treasure, how to hand out XP, you know, literally just in general, how you're going to GM your sessions.
And before we go into the next book, which I think is very important, its trap section is freaking awesome. I think
It's
it gives
sweet.
you over 40 different traps, and it covers almost all the traditional fantasy traps and some ones that I never even heard of that are mad cool.
And let me just say this before we move into the next book too.
Robert?
Real quick. Another thing that they offer you are the Cypher shorts, which are like, 1 to 2 page adventures, which are excellent for introductory adventures. These are excellent. These are something that you can run in an hour or two to get people, just to wet their whistle and let them experience Cypher. So that's something else that you should, really take into account with this book. This is another reason why this book is very important. It even goes over character creation, and so on and so forth.
And of course, it gives you a boatload of monsters.
Yes.
Covers all the major tropes. Cyclops, giant, goblin, orc, elementals. I think it has over 40, right?
40 or
like that.
50. 40 or 50, I think, somewhere around it. And just one other thing I wanted to add to that, too, what you're saying when you said something about the monsters. Cypher does something unique with their monsters that, we didn't touch on either, is that like with the monsters, they're given a baseline level, but then they have other abilities that are within there that may be different levels to, show their unique natures. Like for example, skeletons. I think skeletons are so bomb in Cypher System because they get a bonus when they're using bow and arrows because they don't breathe. They don't breathe, so they don't have to worry about holding the breath to let an arrow go. So they're like consummate archers. So when it's defending against their archery skills, it's a level more difficult for players. Things like that they think about, that Cypher allows you to do, I think is just awesome.
Yeah, it has a write-up. He gives you all the main, what you would normally get from a traditional fantasy setting. He gives you all the major ones. And the last book we're going to talk about is going to round this out because it gives you the rest of the major ones. And just to touch on the base again, I know Al said it, but it gives you, 5 additional races. So now if you count the Cypher System regular book and just Godforsaken, you already have 8 different races or species that you could,
9.
populate your fantasy setting with.
9.
9. Oh, it's 4 and 5, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So you already have 9 species that you could populate your fantasy setting. And what's the last book you want to mention now?
Last book we're going to talk about is Tolus. And if you're coming from D&D, you might actually know this one. This is an older setting brought out or written by Monte Cook. I mean, you guys can correct me on the older one, but Monte Cook wrote it. And yeah, he adapted it to Cypher System. They also made a 5e version, but we're not here to talk about that. But yeah, the Tolus Cypher version ones, let me pull up, I got my notes buried here. So with Tolus, this is an absolute beast of a tome. It's 660 plus pages, and it's an amazing fantasy supplement. Again, not a standalone book. You do need the Cypher System core book. And it's a hyper fleshed out fantasy setting with oodles and oodles of lore and information for you and your players to dive into. And along with this immensely rich setting, there's also fantasy character options available. Our species descriptors. There's gnome, halfling, centaur, cherubim, elf, harrow elf, Litorian, which is like a lion person, lizard folk, that's 6? I've lost count. There's over 50 abilities / spells in the book, and 3 new foci that are specifically set within Tolus. There's associates with the inverted pyramid, honors the sainted battle champions, and sings songs of freedom. Along with that, there's also over 60 artifacts, a bevy of information on fantasy ciphers, like how to incorporate them, how to make them, etc., and optional rules for magics. There's also over 40 creatures in the monster section. And along with all that, there's an episodic campaign at the end of the book, complete with interludes. So if you're coming from D&D or any other game system that has a ton of information available for you, you're very comfortable reading through a lot of material, and that's what makes you feel comfortable, this is the fantasy supplement for you. There's so much lore, and I'll let you guys talk about that part because there's just so much richness to this. Yeah, go on. I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say, and I want to say this about Ptolus. Ptolus is an absolute dream because of the way it's actually put together and laid out. It's literally written like a travel guide. So you are, as a GM, as you're taking your players through this place, you're going through this place as well. Not only is it a city, it's, Ptolus, the city by the spire. Let's just break it down. There's a massive city that has all of this culture and everything going on. Beneath the city, there are caves and warrens and basically a mega dungeon. There's even portions of it that are unexplored, leaving it open to you to do your exploration. And then, of course, the Spire, the big bad evil. They give you a big bad that's so damned bad evil that when they locked him into this, his prison, the Earth said, no, this dude is way too evil. This fucker is evil. And it pushed the Spire up into the heavens. That's just great writing. That's like awesomeness. And guys, there's nothing
I can say that you guys haven't already said. All I'm gonna say is that when someone says Cypher can handle traditional fantasy, well, Ptolus is the aha moment because Ptolus is traditional fantasy, and you got 600 pages of fantasy goodness all in the Cypher system, right? And now, once again, it gives you another 6 races. So now, if
another 8.
Another 8 races. So we have 9. So now you have 17 species that you can inhabit your fantasy game with. Just using these 3 books, you have over 200 spells now. Just using these 3 books, you have probably 100, 200 focus. Just using these 3 books. All that work with fantasy, and it's not even talking about another book we're going to talk about, but these 3 books alone, if you have these 3 books, there's not a fantasy genre you can't run.
Exactly.
If we sit here broke down Ptolus, we'll be here forever. Like Al said, it's 600 something pages. The lore on Ptolus is ridiculous. Right?
Yeah.
You essentially have the biggest fantasy city in the world in this one book, and they break down every district, every sector, every religion. He has over, I think it's like 18 different religions in there with their own, deities, their own followers, their own lore.
Aristocrats, noble houses, districts in the city, people of note, organizations. It's stupid. It's like totally it's bonkers what you get.
It's kind of like how I said in the beginning. It's if you're coming from a setting or let's just say D&D hits you with a ton of that lore, that all that like setting goodies that you love, and this is that. Ptolus is like it. There's just so much in the book. Like I'm at a loss for words.
Right, and I'm gonna add to what we're saying about all this goodness. Once again, 600 pages, and the beautiful thing about it, even with everything that's in that book, again, you're not locked into a rigid systemology of the setting. It's still open enough that you can put your own unique spin on it. Ptolus is the city by the spire, but if Anthony runs it, it's Anthony's Ptolus. Yeah, I know the city, I know things about it, but it's a different adventure if I play in Al's Ptolus or if anybody plays in mine. This is the one thing that Monte Cook has excelled at, and it's what Cypher excels at. It leaves you the creative freedom to be creative. and that hands down is totally what keeps me sitting at this, sitting here and talking about it like that. I'm like a kid in a candy store. I haven't felt this passionate since I was 12 years old. This is crazy.
At the end of the day, if you want to run traditional fantasy and Cypher System and you want to get a grasp of how to do it, I think Tolus is the best example of for someone saying, "Hey, I want to run D&D using Cypher System, but I don't know how." Tolus is the best out of the three setting books that we're talking about today to teach you how to do that.
Exactly. So
because it's basically traditional fantasy.
Well, actually, I have my Tallest on hand, and look at this thing. Like, wait. Let me pick up a regular book. This is First Responders compared to Tallest. Like, what the hell is this?
beautiful. It's beautiful. That's what it is.
This is such. You'll be reading this for years, like years upon years. Like, me personally, I'm a slow reader.
Big Mac.
This is a hell of a Big Mac right here.
Yeah. And we could talk, like you said, we have another video that we broke down, told us we went through it, and I believe it's a 2-part or 3-part video we had to do, because that's how big it is. But
Tallest is just a great setting, man.
Right. Now, we're going to move on because you don't want to keep you here all night, guys, but we're happy for those of us who's hung with us this long. Our next book we're going to talk about is an actual full-on setting that's fully fleshed out for Cypher System, and it's called Gods of the Fall. And the best way I like to describe it is it's the Cypher System version of like Exalted, because you literally play a fledgling god, and it's got a rich setting. The lore of it is awesome. You can take these elements and add them into your regular traditional game, or you can take this setting and add elements of Tallest and God Forsaken and the core rule book into it. Absolutely a blast. Once again, you do need the Cypher System rule book in order to use this book.
And I will say that this setting book, I'm not, again, I say this almost every time we talk about reading books or settings. I struggle to sit down and actually read a full-on setting. That's why I usually make up my own stuff, mostly because I get overwhelmed by like information. So something like Tallest is not my jam at all. I'm transparent. As lovely as that book is, I will never sit down and read that thing because I can't. I struggle. But something like Gods of the Fall, this is a fleshed out setting that's just fleshed out enough that it's not overwhelming. There's a lot of cool information about places within Gods of the Fall. I forget what the whole continent is called, the Nightland or whatever. And yeah, like I absolutely love the amount of detail because it's just enough that you know what the world is like, but you can inject your own lore, your own canon, whatever have you, and play within that world, again, without being overwhelmed by a ton of details. Because, again, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you're bringing up. One other thing to make a very good point, valid point, though, Gods of the Fall introduces the concept of manipulating the character types. They introduced 4 character types based on the core types from the rule book, from the CSR, but they changed them just enough that they become their own unique identities. And it gives you your first example of actually seeing that. So showing you again that you can do that too for your own games.
Yeah, and I will say that, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I'll finish with you.
Just that, this is an older Cypher System book. This is one of the first couple of setting books they released right after Cypher System, the original one, came out. So some of the wording and like types and whatnot, like it's a little dated if you know the Cypher System revised and then you look at this, not having seen the original Cypher book. Again, it's nothing breaking, like it's not going to mess up anything if you only know Cypher Revised and then come look at this book. I just wanted to throw it out there that it might seem a little off in certain parts based on some wording, based on some page references, because it is talking about the original Cypher book and not the Cypher Revised book.
And go ahead, Ed.
No, you can finish what you're saying. do my spiel about God before you. I got a lot to say about it.
No, I was just gonna say, and again, just like the other books, this one introduces 4 new foci, 2 new races, 6 new descriptors. Again, it continues to add to your game. And like I said, even if you didn't want to use the setting or anything setting specific, you still have additional, races and so on and so forth. There's additional tools to add into your game to flesh out your fantasy setting.
And I will say this before Anthony goes on his spiel, because I know he loves Gods of the Fall. He's probably going to say a lot, and he'll probably touch on this too. Something cool that Gods of the Fall does, and again, this is something you can use if in your own fantasy game. Let's say you're not trying to run Gods of the Fall as a setting, but just trying to use it as inspiration. Let's say you wanted to run PCs who have godlike abilities, like they are up and coming gods or whatever have you, maybe just super powered fantasy characters. Gods of the Fall introduces what's called divine shifts, and if you know the Cypher rulebook, there are power shifts, and they're the same thing. They're just called divine shifts for thematic purposes, but it introduces the fact that, hey, if you want to make high-powered characters, just throw power shifts on there. Why not?
Exactly.
And along with that, the book does provide some fantasy-specific ones. So this is a good one to pick up if you do want to have some high-powered fantasy options.
Yeah, you want to do that God tier fantasy game, then Gods of the Fall is the book for you.
Epic level fantasy.
I mean, first of all, everybody knows Gods of the Fall is my favorite setting in Cypher System, period. It's not my favorite book, it's my favorite setting. I met Al playing Gods of the Fall.
Dean.
You met me.
I mean, I met Dean playing Gods of the Fall. It's probably the setting that I've run the most over the course of CU. I've run a ton of Gods of the Fall. I absolutely love this setting. You guys broke down everything that's great about Gods of the Fall. It's supers in the fantasy genre. You guys are playing demigods, doing fantastical things at early stages of the game. It's absolutely bonkers and gonzo, and it's just the way I love to run my games, bonkers and gonzo, and it gives you the tools to do that. I will say this, out of all the books that we spoke about, this is the one book that, with running traditional fantasy, you have to do some subtraction. If you porting anything over from Gods of the Fall to your regular Tolus game, to your regular God-Forsaken game, to your regular Cypher core game, because everything is slightly more powerful. Because even the ciphers and the artifacts take power shifts in mind when they're created. So they do, even like the basic ciphers are way more powerful in Gods of the Fall than they are in any of the other books we mentioned earlier. So, I mean, you could take that, I mean, they're easily adjustable, but there is a slight power difference. I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, most definitely. Something that is, I mentioned it, that high-powered feeling is definitely there and present within the stuff presented, like you said, like the ciphers, the enemies, all that stuff. It kind of takes that power shift into account.
The creatures, the enemies, the ciphers, the artifacts, they all, that extra power level is baked into everything in there. So I'm not saying you can't use anything from this book, but if you are running traditional fantasy, you might want to look at it and tone it down slightly, just so it's more of on an even playing field. But as for a setting, this setting freaking rocks. Like I don't know.
I love it. I can give a quick TLDR.
Like you said, we met playing this game, playing in a Gods of the Fall game, which was probably one of the coolest games I've ever played, and
it's such a cool, and again, like I said earlier, the reason I love this setting is because it gives you just enough details to know what the world is, to know what it's like, and it doesn't overwhelm the senses with all these like tiny details, kind of like Tolus has everything in it. It has a description for every single thing you'll find in Tolus. This is kind of the opposite spectrum, where it's very loose, and again, it's super easy to input your own ideas, your own canon lore, whatever have you, into it. And did we give a brief rundown on what the setting actually is? If not, I'll do that right now. I don't think we did.
Basically I said what it was, but you can, if you want to go over it again.
You gave the wrong thing for the world is a Lantar, though. It's not.
Ah, there we go. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Elantar, it was heaven that fell.
Oh, see, this guy knows.
Yeah.
Elantar was that's the land that was the realm of the gods that fell to the earth. The place is literally, it's called the Nightlands. The city is Corvos. There's also the rogue moon out there, Nod. I mean, dude, I love the setting. So yeah.
See, like this is crazy because again, I love this setting too. I read it maybe twice or whatever, and I don't remember any of that. I'm so bad at remembering things. But
this
again,
was the best map I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of, let me pull
that
up.
map is beautiful.
Yeah,
what page is the map on? Do you know?
Just the opening cover, the inside cover. And it's also insert. It's also an insert.
Well,
you can see it on page 11 now.
So while Al's pulling that up, I'm gonna just make a couple of honorable mentions out there for more fantasy stuff. But we're not gonna go into any detail on those things before we get out of here because we've been talking to you guys for a while now. There's Shotguns and Sorcery, which was written by Matt Forback based on his Shotguns and Sorcery books and novels. It's rich, it's I guess you call it kind of a apocalyptic fantasy setting. There's also great stuff on the Cypher Creator Program on Drive-Thru RPG. Our good friend Gonza Gaming has a book called Mortal Fantasy, which was inspired by Gods of the Fall when it first came out. That is an excellent toolkit because it kind of brings in the idea of traditional fantasy characters and so on and so forth. If you didn't want to play gods in that Gods of the Fall realm.
It gave you all the traditional fantasy archetypes too.
Yeah. There's also Megan Tolentino. They have a product on Drive-Thru RPG about ancestries, basically turning the race ancestries, bringing that aspect that we were talking about, bringing that kind of to the forefront. I have a product on here for Vantian spellcasting, Melvando's Mythic Mecum. So it's like a lot of stuff out there. There's other stuff out there by other creators as well, but those are just some more tools out there to bring forth your fantasy setting, to flesh it out. And then of course, a lot of people, worried about it, but Diamond Throne is on its way out. It's at the printer, which is another Monte Cook setting that was done for 3.0 that has now been adapted to Cypher System. That book is going to be great. It has a lot of beautiful things. Those of you who have your PDFs, you should know, it brings a lot of traditional fantasy ideas and a lot of Monte's unique perspectives, and if you know anything about that one, the Diamond Throne was actually created because he wanted an alternative to the traditional, Western fantasy ideologies. And he came up with this one, and it's really great. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely, if you're looking more for the fantasy setting or genre, outside of the books we talked about, the Monte Cook Games books, there's a ton of fan stuff, a ton.
Yeah. I mean, I hope some of this conversation was informative, and I hope that most people that are coming from other systems give fantasy a try at Cypher System. It might take a little getting used to, but at the end of the day, I think you'll enjoy it, and it'll give you a little different feel on traditional like D20 fantasy games. But once you get the hang of it, it's a very viable way of playing fantasy games. So give Cypher System a try. I think you'll enjoy it.
I think the only thing I'm going to add to that is, yes, give it a try. Do your best to try to get someone who is versed in Cypher to run you in your first game. That makes a huge difference. You can parse through it on your own, but if you've got somebody to help, with your first experience, your first few experiences, somebody to kind of, hold your hand as a co-DM or something like that, that is always ideal. But you can't do it on your own.
If
What'd you say?
if you can't get somebody, watch some videos.
Right.
Go to YouTube and watch some videos of people playing. Because I mean, I think Cypher Systems get to the point where there's a ton of actual plays out there for you to watch. There's a ton of toeless actual plays. Or if you can't find someone to play, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord. We got almost 5,000 people live on that Discord. There's games being run every day. And who knows, you can game with us because we're running games there every day.
Yep. And CB Nation said, can't wait to be in an Afrofuturism game. Well, have my way. That setting will be coming soon.
Also, just to touch on some base before we even sign out here, I just want to get you guys up to date on what's going on with the CU. Next Thursday, next Thursday, right? Next Thursday, we have the entire Monte Cook Games design team coming on for AMA live on the Discord server. If you join the Discord server, you'll get all the information. And I said yes, the entire design team. That's Sean, Monty, Bruce, Shauna, Dominique, all coming on to do a live AMA Ask Me Anything. We have them on for a whole 4-hour block. But you must be a member of the Discord. So if you're not a member of the Discord, please go and join that now. You can ask them any questions you like, and they'll be there to answer those questions. And the following week, finally, the 4,000 member giveaway co-hosted by Monte Cook Games will be here live on this stream of February 9th. Come, Tammy Ryan of Monte Cook Games is co-hosting the event for you. We have many great products to give away. Trust me, I'm on behind the scenes right now, cataloging everything. There's some freaking awesome stuff we're giving away, not only for Monte Cook Games, but for many other great companies in the tabletop industry. We're kind enough to donate products between actual books and PDFs, dice, all sorts of things to members of the server. I know we're a little late on this giveaway. We almost have 5,000 now on the server. But it's going to be well worth the wait. So, guys, next week Thursday is the MCG AMA. Ask Me Anything.
And what time does it start, Anthony?
It starts at 3 p.m. I believe, right?
Eastern.
It's
3 p.m. Eastern time.
So all the information. Join today, and everything is posted there. Go ask some questions. And February 9th, live at 10 p.m. Eastern time, we're doing a full giveaway with tons and tons of products. So all you have to do to enter the giveaway, unfortunately, you have to be on the Discord server as well, because there's where you'll be able to enter the raffle. But you join the raffle there, we'll have many great gifts to give. I hope all you guys win stuff. And last but not least, you want to say something now?
No, I was just going to say that I will be posting the actual entry method for the giveaway shortly.
And I just want to add one thing to that, Anthony. After the AMA, we will have a recap show to kind of go over the AMA, just so everybody knows. So at 10 o'clock next Thursday, after the AMA session, we are going to recap that for those who couldn't be there.
Thank you, Dean. Last but not least, can I go?
Go.
Look, last but not least, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server for all things Monte Cook Games. We have over 4,000 members and growing. You can get in games, play games, talk about games, or just chat and lurk if you like. But if Discord's not for you, join our Facebook group. It's not as big as our Discord, but we have great conversations being had there as well. Give us a subscription here on Twitch, or go to YouTube and like, share, subscribe to our videos there. We hit 1,000 subs on YouTube, and we try to go even further, so any support will be greatly appreciated. Our videos are always free, but you can give us a little donation on Patreon. It helps us out with little things like Zoom calls. Or go to an online store, Patreon. I keep on saying Patreon, Ko-fi. Go to an online store and pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch, like the shirt Dean got on or the hat I got on. And yes, we'll have Cape soon. And last but not least, we love you guys. I don't know why the last 3 weeks I've been saying Patreon.
Are you telling us we need to start a Patreon? Is that what you're trying to do?
Not telling me that we need a Patreon.
And Dean, any last words? All right, awesome. So thank you guys so much for stopping by to chat with us. It's been a blast as usual. Hopefully we gave you some insight on how to run fantasy and Cypher System. It's very much doable. Don't listen to the naysayers. Yeah, thank you again. And from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Bye, guys.